Okay. Yeah, what?
0.5.
Oh, okay. So, had a little chance to think about some of the questions that we have been posed to us from our scenario. And so, in terms of a structured decision-making approach, I've got a little slide that hopefully will just crystallise a little bit better, because I know we've just been having a very quick discussion about how that might look. So I'm just going to put that up. Just going to put that up there. It's really odd. I don't quite like there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for some reason. That's knows why that is. We'll just put it up there. Right, we'll just look at it on here. No, it's really odd. We've done so much presenting and now it doesn't want to. Now it doesn't want to present. It's really odd. Okay, right, so just giving us an orange screen, which is really bizarre, and I'm not sure why that is when we've been able to present all the way through. That's the screen. Let me just try one more time, otherwise we will just go ahead without the slide, and I'll share the slide with you. Share the slide. Right. Doesn't like our last slides, does it? I don't know why that is. No. I don't know why it won't. It's here, but what I'll do, if you kind of start to tell me just how you might think about structuring your advice to the magistrates. What is the starting point in any scenario that we've been talking about today?
Welfare of the child.
Absolutely, and that is your top. That is your first consideration. That's the section 44 that we talked about right at the very beginning. Children and Young Persons Act of 1933. Every court, when dealing with a child or a young person, is brought before it should have regard to the welfare of that child or young person. And we looked at some other things that might fall into what is actually considered to be part of that test. So that is going to be the first consideration. So where would you go next in terms of your structure? Do we go straight to a remand youth detention accommodation? What's our process?
Presumption of bail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is unconditional bail,
Yeah.
pre-conviction.
Yeah. Are we what do we use? What act are we using?
Bail Act.
We're still using the Bail Act, exactly like we would with an adult. So what would you then? What would the magistrates then have to be satisfied of?
So in order to go any further, they need to be satisfied that there are exceptions to bail.
Absolutely, yes. So, and if they are satisfied that there are any, and it only has to be one, it doesn't have to be lots. As long as they are satisfied there is one or more exceptions to bail, what would they do at that point?
If there's any conditions that alleviate those risks.
Yes, that's it. And so you're doing exactly the same as you would in terms of an adult. If the bench are satisfied that they can impose that, what are they suggesting? What were they suggesting here for Samuel?
Residents. Curfew and appointments directed by laws.
Okay. So in terms of a curfew, is a curfew something that would be possible in terms of Samuel, do we have to meet any kind of criteria for a curfew?
Well, it's an alternative to custody, so it has to be serious enough, I guess.
So
Violent or sexual.
it is. So
Yeah,
it's.
something.
Do you remember it comes under the Bail Act. It's the section 3AA of the Bail Act, and so tagged curfew, electronically tagged curfew, can only be imposed if they are 12. So we tick that off, can't we? They are charged with or convicted of a violent or sexual offence, or an offence punishable in the case of an adult with imprisonment of 14 years or more, or have a recent history of repeatedly committing imprisonable offences whilst remanded on bail or to the local authority accommodation. So does robbery fit into this criteria?
No.
No. It's 12 years,
Yeah.
maximum sentence.
Oh, the criteria for the tagging?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a violent crime.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
sorry,
he's 12.
yes.
Sorry, he's over 12, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's over 12. He's been charged with a violent or sexual offence,
Yeah.
or an offence which is punishable in the case of an adult. So
He's got 2 out of 3.
yeah. So actually, that's enough, isn't it? Because it only has to be one, but we've actually got. Yeah,
We misread
yeah,
that.
yeah. So it's an or. It's an or. So you've got a violent offence, which is robbery. And does anyone know how we might decide if something is a violent offence? Is there any? Do we just decide ourselves, or is there a criteria?
15 of the Criminal Justice Act.
Excellent. That's exactly right. It's not easy to find, actually, is it? So it's good that you've seen that before. So yeah, and we've also got an offence punishable in the case of an adult with imprisonment, 14 years. What does robbery carry for an adult? 12 years.
Sorry, what was?
For an adult, it's life imprisonment. Is it?
Oh, on the sentencing guidelines.
So I think we hit
That's right.
yeah, we hit the criteria there. So in terms of that, okay. But so that would be an option. That would be an option to the bench in terms of that. But it depends if your bench decided that actually conditional bail wasn't appropriate, and they didn't think that the conditions would allay the risk. And of course, he's got quite a lot of previous convictions for somebody who isn't actually that old, really. So 15. We've got 3 robberies when aged 15. We've also got a robbery at 14. And you've got which received YRO, so youth rehabilitation order with supervision. And then 3 months ago, you've got a robbery, burglary, and possession of cannabis. So only 3 months ago. So you have got. I think the magistrate. It'd be fair for the magistrates to say that there is a history there of committing offences. So it would be a matter for the magistrates to decide whether or not the conditions that are being suggested are sufficient. Say that we decide that they're not, and actually they say, you know what, this has reached the point where actually conditions aren't going to be sufficient. Where do we fit next in terms of withholding bail? What's the starting point when you withhold, or the presumption when you withhold bail? Where should you remand to?
Local authority.
Is that with conditions or without?
With or without?
It can be either, absolutely. So actually, the magistrates could consider, if they think that bail conditions in themselves are insufficient because the risk is too high, they could remand but the expectation is they would remand to local authority. But as we've already established, the curfew could be one of the conditions, couldn't it? Could we fit the criteria? The criteria fits. If that is the remand, when would you need to bring Samuel back to court? Just because he's remanded.
Need to clear days.
Absolutely. So it's 8 clear days that he would need to be back before the court. What about though if the magistrate said actually a remand to local authority is not sufficient? Where would you go? Where would you go next? Where would you have to go next? What's the next stage if remand to local authority is not enough?
The youth detention accommodation.
Yes, you would. And so what would you do in terms of, we'd go to your flow charts, wouldn't you? So you've got your section 98 and your section 99 of LASBO. So you would need to go through and the magistrates would need to see whether or not whether those criteria is met. So what have we got here? So for both 98 and 99, there's the condition, the age condition. Well, I think we can meet that, can't we? We can meet that. We can also meet, at this stage, we can meet the legal representation stage, can't we? Because although we've got duty solicitor, he's a little bit, well, he's trying to leave, isn't he? But you can still, he's still there and he's representing. So essentially, as I said before, the prosecution are going to almost say to the court, well, we think a remand under whichever 98 or 99 is going to be appropriate. They might say both, but they are going to take the magistrates through why they say that. So if you're going through section 98, you've then got to hit the criteria. So you've got the sentencing condition, which is, it appears to the court it's very likely that the child will be sentenced to a custodial sentence. So if you have got sentencing guidelines for a youth, then you would use that. So for example, robbery, I think, has got a sentencing guideline of its own for a young person. If you haven't got one, then you have to use the adult sentencing guidelines, but then you have to effectively almost, you have to then look at the age of the young person, any vulnerabilities, and the court will need to adjust the guideline based on it being a young person. And remember I said there's in the sentencing guidelines there's actually a section where it talks about actually how the bench would do that, and the kind of things that they would take into account in terms of adjusting the guideline to fit for a young person. So it's sentencing of children and young people. I think you had it up earlier, didn't you? You were looking at it. So it will tell you how to do that. So again, if you're satisfied and you can tick the sentencing condition, then for section 98, you then go through the criteria. Is it is the offence sexual, violent, or carry 14 years or more for an adult? I think for robbery, we can tick that. And then have a look at the bottom. You've got the necessity condition to protect the public from death or serious personal injury, or to prevent the commission of further imprisonable offences and the risks posed by the child cannot be managed safely in the community. So again, magistrates would need to consider all of that and make a decision whether or not it meets section 98. If they don't think it does, they can move on to section 99 and you effectively go through the same process. If the magistrates decide so for the history condition, then it's about a recent and significant history of absconding subject to a custodial remand, and the history is relevant in all of the circumstances. So you'd have to have a very specific look with your bench at the wording and decide whether or not the first history condition is relevant or the second history condition. So you'd go through that and make a decision if a remand to youth detention accommodation is going to be possible and going to be appropriate. If you say it is, then remember we have to give reasons, and they're written reasons to the young person, YOS, and the defence representatives. So you have to produce written reasons in relation to that. If the magistrate can't be satisfied, where do they go? Of a youth detention accommodation remand.
Back to
Remand and local authority.
Yeah, they have to then just go back and deal with it in that way. So that's really essentially you're just going through. You're going through the charts, and as I say, actually they're quite straightforward. You'll probably find the prosecutors going through the same flow chart as well to try and like pinpoint it for you as well. What about question 2, very briefly? If there's limited information, can your bench paragraph 5, the young person, or paragraph 3, which is in relation to their welfare? Can you do a paragraph 5? Just because the duty solicitor's got to go for a family party.
no.
No. Paragraph 5 and paragraph 3 are very different to when you're in the adult court. And so the expectation is that if there's one of the exceptions to bail is found, the court's got to make a decision whether they remand to local authority accommodation or to youth detention. They've got to make it doesn't really work in the youth court, because actually if you think about it, how could that be right that you've got a young person, because what's the effect of a paragraph 5? You go in custody to the next day or the next day, don't you? If you're on a Saturday, you'd have to go to a Monday, wouldn't you? So going back to the whole welfare principle, you couldn't just remand the young person, could you? Bearing in mind they've potentially been in custody already at the police station. So paragraph 5 is just not an option in terms of young people. They have to make a decision, and actually if they'll probably make a decision for whatever reason, they'll probably go to either conditional bail or to local authority accommodation, because then local authority will then have to make their decision about where they were going to be placed. What about question 3? The duty solicitor was unwilling to wait and leaves the court prior to youth spending service attending. Could the bench consider a youth detention accommodation if Samuel was unrepresented?
No.
I mean, basically, the legal representation conditions, they've got to be legally represented, or if the only time when they don't have to be legally represented is if they have, if they've refused representation or their legal aid hasn't been granted. But I think if their legal aid hasn't been granted, that may not be the fault of the young person. So I think really they ought to be represented, even if they're then represented by duty. So there really ought to be some representation available. Just very quickly, question 4. We've kind of answered it a little bit in a way, but bench decide to remand to local authority accommodation with residence curfew and the reporting to YOS 3 times a week. Prosecutor reviews the file and withdraws the robbery, and then prefers the charge of possession of a bladed article. Can the court still impose a tag?
No.
Now, the right to say no. Why do you say no?
I don't know. It's not violent.
You're absolutely right, because we have to go back to, do you remember the criteria for a curfew? And do you remember the schedule? Yeah,
It's not violent.
it doesn't fall within the schedule. And so actually, and of course, the maximum sentence for a bladed article is 4 years, not life imprisonment like robbery is. So actually, you lose that. You're not able to satisfy two of the criteria. Although you have to do one, but actually, out of that, 2 of them aren't going to be satisfied anyway. So, anyone got any questions on anything we've talked about? I know it's quite whistled up with the youth corps because it's really new information that we've kind of only learned today. So do have a kind of, if you think of anything later on and you think, you know what, I just didn't get that, or just, you know, you can always contact me and we can have a chat about that, or speak to your mentors. Just in terms of next steps, hopefully you're going to have an opportunity to kind of do some observations in the remand court, or even if you're on your study days and you're in the office, just go in and just watch a couple of cases, or whoever's doing the court, just say to them, you know, if you get a remand case, you know, Teams me and I'll just pop in and watch, or a young person, again, come in and have a look and see if you can do an observation there. I've got a knowledge checker that I just did for you on youths in the adult court, which I'll send through the link. So if you're able to it's just 10 questions just to kind of tick the boxes on, but it's just really to try and consolidate just while it's fresh in your mind. Hopefully it will just consolidate it a little bit more. And I've got a feedback form which I'll send you the link to as well. If you're happy, if you're happier than you were this morning, if you're happy to do it, just as you're on your way out, just kind of think about where you felt like you were this morning, and just on the other side, just I didn't draw the line, did I? Just come back and just kind of do whether your face is a bit happier, or actually if it's a bit sadder, it can be sadder if you want. Doesn't it's just really just more as a little barometer to me, just to let you know how you feel about today, if that's okay with everyone. Okay. Thank you. 4 o'clock. Look, I've gone 7 minutes. 7 minutes over. It's because I talk too much. So thank you. No, Stephen, thank you for all your engagement today. It really does make a difference in terms of your learning. So I'm going to stop recording now.